Thank you very much. I think that today most people were hoping that we'll bring an end to this long ordeal that our country has been put through by APNU AFC, where the multiple attempts at rigging the elections have played out through various personalities and through various activities. And we have had to endure all of this and be patient and work to overcome them. By now, most of Guyana would know that the People's Progressive Party won the elections held on March 2nd. They have seen the statements of poll that were posted by the People's Progressive Party match the statements of Recount. They have seen from the numbers in the Recount that the People's Progressive Party won by over 15,000 votes more than APNU AFC. And many of them are wondering, if this is so clear to everyone, why is it that we still, over 100 days from since the elections were held, why is it we do not have a government sworn in on the basis of those results? And the simple answer is the gangsterism, the crookery of APNU AFC, and the deceit that they have practiced from the beginning through Mingo's inflation of numbers in their favor, and when that was exposed, they changed their narrative. When that failed to secure the win, they moved to the commission. And then when the chair to annul the elections, and when the chair made it clear that she had no jurisdiction to annul the elections, they have now, and was approaching the declaration today, through their instrument Lowenfield, now they and others, they have now approached the Court of Appeal in a disguised elections petition, hoping to thwart the will of the people, and hoping that somehow, based on a technicality, as Ramjatan said, and possibly or maybe a favorable ruling in the court, they can win the elections or be declared the winner of the elections, not based on the elections, not based on the number of votes that people got, but on the basis of a technicality. Read Ramjatan's comment to the Starbuck News today. He said we still have hopes of winning on a technicality. You can't win elections on a technicality. And so they're exploring this option of a petition disguised to seem as though it's an elections petition, but disguised in a manner which could claim jurisdiction, where the Court of Appeal could claim, or they could claim it has jurisdiction before the Court of Appeal. But before I deal with that issue, I want to just take you through a bit of the facts that are known to everyone. They fought against the recount. They said, we wanted to block the recount. They tried to delay it for 156 days, Lowenfield. We finally had the recount. They tried to get rid of the CARICOM team. We persevered, and the CARICOM team remained throughout. And what happened in the recount? After each region was counted, all the ballot boxes, and as I said before, sometime earlier, every vote in those ballot boxes was authenticated. They had to check for the validity of the ballot paper, that it was GECOM issued, and secondly, they had to see that it was appropriately stamped and only then counted, and the voter's intention was clear. And then those were recounted. And what did the recount figures prove? The recount figures prove exactly what we knew the SOPs had spoken about, which is that the PPP victory. But after tabulating or counting all the boxes in every region, so in region 4, for example, 869 boxes, in front of every single political party and the country, GECOM tabulated those votes. The staff of GECOM, appointed by Mr. Lowenfield himself, he appointed the supervisor for the recount and a coordinator for each district. And at the end of the tabulation of all the boxes, there was a certification process. And each of those results per district was certified by the coordinator appointed by Lowenfield and all the political parties signing on to the certificates, each of those certificates. Now, one key element, a line in that, in each of those 10 declarations for the 10 regions, which are all certified, there is one line which says total valid vote cast. So GECOM appointed staff, Lowenfield appointed staff, validated the recount figures by not just signing on to the entire certificate, but also putting a GECOM stamp on those certificates, and on each certificate, it has the total number of votes, valid votes cast. So Lowenfield was supposed to take the 10 certificates for each of the 10 regions and tabulate them, which he did, and present a report to GECOM. In that report, this is by the order, the recount order. In that report, Lowenfield tabulated all the 10 regions. He came up with a total, and the total figure that he submitted to GECOM showed one column, which at the top of that column, it says total valid votes cast. And it has the total valid votes cast, 460,000, somewhere near that figure. I'm rounding up. And of the 460,000 votes, his report to GECOM showed that the PPP got 233,000 and APNU 217,000, or just around there. So he submitted the report in accordance with the order. The order says, along with the report, he had to do a summary for each district. So 10 summaries of the observation reports. So that is where the adventure began. That is where APNU's plan was hatched. And it was worse than the Mingo's plot, because they couldn't deal with the recount figures because those showed the PPP victory. So Lowenfield then took all the allegations made by APNU, and he then adjusted the number of people who voted or cast their votes validly from 460,000 to 185,000. And he's saying, based on APNU's allegations, I have to reduce now the total valid votes cast from 460,000 to 185,000. And then he chose to give APNU 67% or 2/3 of the 185,000 and PPP 30% of it. In Region 6, which is a PPP stronghold where we always won, he reduced the number of valid votes from 64,000 to 14,000. And then he gave APNU 9,000 and the PPP 5,000. So APNU won a landslide in Berbice based on Lowenfield's figures. This is worse than Mingo. Egregiously worse. Horribly worse. It has no logic to it. So let me give you a couple of examples. So what he did, for example, there are about 5,000 cases where APNU said people were out of the country and couldn't vote. These were allegations that they made. Now, first of all, they couldn't prove that the people voted, but they couldn't even prove that the people were out of the country because Harman submitted a list of 517 names to the chair of the 5,000, and more than half were found in 1 week by the PPP. And even the list that the commissioner was asked to validate, we found that there are several of those people who never left Guyana. So he then took an allegation of 5,000 without even knowing the names of these people, without even verifying. APNU did not supply these names to the commission, but they only supplied 517 of the 5,000 names, and then proceeded to invalidate the 285,000 people, took away the vote from 285,000 people. Now, you recall, in 2015, when APNU won the elections, the total valid votes cast at that election was 412,000. And he's saying, and APNU won the majority by about 4,000 or 5,000 votes. So he is saying that in these elections, only 185,000 votes were valid for the whole country, but in 2015, when APNU won, 412,000 were valid. You can see how biased and how criminal his calculation was. So there were 56 claims of dead people and about 5,000 people. You hear all of this about lots of claims of dead people voting. But when we look at his report, there were only about 56 claims. But what they did, he would take, if there is a claim of one person, dead person voting in a box by APNU without proving it, and that box had 300 votes, he will then invalidate all 300 by one claim from APNU that the box was contaminated and therefore all 300 votes became invalid. And guess where they claim people died? Mostly in PPP strongholds, just to get Lowenfield to invalidate the votes, mainly in PPP strongholds. So this is what happened. This is a criminal conspiracy. Criminal conspiracy. And for anyone who had any doubt that APNU was directly involved with the Mingo conspiracy, all the doubts should be put to rest, because now they're involved in a worse way with Mingo, who after the votes had been tabulated, and the world knows this, you counted the votes in the open. Everybody heard about it. They were glued to their radio sets, etc. They were live stream, audio live stream, and video live stream. And now, at this stage, to pull this off. So, guess what, CARICOM? Now, Mr. Granger himself, all along, because a lot of this relies on him, and he has shown absolutely no leadership whatsoever. But this is when asked about, up to just last Saturday, what he had to say about the CARICOM team. He said, the question of CARICOM's presence cannot be construed as interference because its role is embedded in law, that there is an order. which authorizes CARICOM's function in the national recount. It cannot be interference. He goes on to say, the reason why we invited CARICOM to come, both the leader of the opposition and myself, was to establish the credibility of the process, the validity of the process. We did not ask them to just come to do arithmetic, just to count, but to determine to some extent whether the process that took place on March 2nd was in fact credible and whether it was so badly flawed, whether there was evidence of manipulation, whether there were so many irregularities that the process was unacceptable. This is what he said we invited CARICOM to do, to not just look at the count, but to pronounce on the process. Well, CARICOM was issued a report and they pronounced on the process. First of all, they said the results, the recount results are completely acceptable. They said the actual count of the vote was indeed transparent. They said in their report, we are of the unshakable belief that the people of Guyana expressed their will at the ballot box and the results are completely acceptable. Further, in another part of the report, they said, despite our concerns, nothing that we witness warrants a challenge to the inescapable conclusion that the recount results are acceptable and should constitute the basis of the declaration of the results of the March 2nd, 2020 elections. Any aggrieved political party has been afforded the right to seek redress before the courts in the form of an elections petition. This is CARICOM speaking here, a process that was endorsed by all the leaders of CARICOM. They go on to say the national recount process then, despite some of its minor flaws, is not an indictment of the 2020 polls, and the team categorically rejects the concerted public efforts to discredit the 2020 polls up to the disastrous Region 4 tabulation. So the only group that was publicly trying to discredit the polling day activities is APNU. And they said, we categorically reject that effort to discredit the poll. Categorically reject. That's CARICOM. They go on to say the recounting of the votes was conducted with as much precision as possible and with absolutely no hint of bias on the part of the GECOM station workers. Their impartiality with respect to the vote count was outstanding. Further, and this is important, the numerous requests for information on serial numbers, this is by APNU agents at the station. So let me read that back again. The numerous requests for information on serial numbers were so bizarre that on one observed occasion, an APNU AFC agent was prepared to query serial numbers on the official list of electors in a workstation where no one had voted. So that is how bizarre it was, the CARICOM team found. These challenges were often made on the ground of death and migration. Presumably, therefore, the contention is that in the March 2nd, 2020 polls, the phenomenon of ghost voting occurred as well as voter impersonation and other forms of voter fraud. The team viewed much of the exercise as a fishing expedition. That's how they saw it. And this fishing expedition was designed to gather data for a possible election petition, and which resulted in considerable time being wasted during the recount. Furthermore, the net was cast extremely wide in the hope of at least making a small catch, and at times the anticipated harvest ended up in slim pickings. In only one observed recount of a ballot box was the number of queried serials confirmed as having voted, in fact, significant relative to the queried numbers. So this is what CARICOM view was on that aspect of the report. It was a fishing expedition about talking about dead people voting and people who migrated with the aim of gathering data to file an elections petition. And they said it came up with slim pickings. The public utterances of some GECOM commissioners, political pundits, and politicians may have sounded an ominous tone for the 2020 elections, with a partisan-driven and distorted narrative on migrant voting, phantom voting, and implied voter impersonation. So they're saying it was a distorted narrative on migrant voting, phantom voting, and implied voter impersonation. The recounting of the votes was conducted with as much precision as possible and with no hint of bias. I read that. I said that before. So this is what CARICOM had to say about the recount itself, that the data is credible, the process was credible, and it forms the basis for a declaration. They made that very, very explicit. They said also aggrieved parties can go to elections petition. They spoke about all these allegations of dead people voting and migrant voting as just a concerted effort to discredit the poll, which had no basis in fact. This is the CARICOM report that Mr. Granger was waiting on to pronounce on the credibility of the report. So when the report, and which Mr. Lowenfield took to the commission, outlining the numbers, as I mentioned before, the correct numbers, and then his summaries were discussed at the commission, the chair said, made a presentation, and she clearly outlined the key issues that were being asked of the commission. So APNU was claiming that because of these allegations, the poll must be annulled, that you must have fresh elections. So the chair made it clear. She said, the commission cannot arrogate unto itself a jurisdiction to annul an election since no specific power was conferred on it under Article 162(1)(b). A perusal of Articles 162 and 163 of the Constitution shows that the articles clearly and sharply separate the functions of GECOM and the High Court, respectively, in matters of electoral process. So that was clear. They failed to get the elections annulled, which was their game plan. That's plan one. So that failed. So they had to then move to try to get the allegations and Lowenfield report, this jaundice report, or not the report, the summaries, become a key part of the report, that he must prepare the final report to the commission based on the summaries and the distorted figures. So the chair mentioned clearly here that she's the opinion that some of the allegations, what they allege, are of a serious nature and must be addressed. However, Article 163(1)(b) of the Constitution confers on the High Court the exclusive jurisdiction to determine the validity of an election. So in this case, she is making it clear that you can go to the court. I'm not going to quote all the areas from the GECOM's press release about the chair's statement, But she made it clear anyone who feels aggrieved has the route, like the CARICOM report said, of to explore all of these allegations through an elections petition. And having made those two rulings, APNU's camp was in turmoil. So Joseph Harmon immediately came out and he said Lowenfield will present the final report, although the chair made it clear. The chair then wrote Lowenfield because he had adjusted the report, the final numbers, the verified, certified, valid numbers, and put in his, reduced the number of electors by 285,000 people. Guyanese lost their votes because Lowenfield took APNU's allegations. We all lost our votes. And the chair said, no, you can't do that. You don't have the right. We don't have the right. No, GECOM doesn't have the right. Neither do you have the right to do that. You can't. Only the court can do that. And she then directed Lowenfield through a letter to prepare the report, the final report, and calculate the number of seats using the recount data. And that is what was supposed to be presented today, and Irfan Ali be declared the president. So they then did not succeed at GECOM to get what they wanted. So now, as I said before, Harman and Ramjatan, they seem to know what would be in Lowenfield's report before Lowenfield had prepared it. And Lowenfield's, not a report, I keep remembering, the summaries that Lowenfield prepared have a striking resemblance to the APNU webpage, what they had put out. In fact, his was a little worse. APNU had nullified 257,000 valid votes. He went up to nullify 285,000 valid votes, even worse than APNU, to give them the two-thirds majority, 67%. They got in his new number. Not even, he didn't have any shame about himself or anything. The totally shameless bunch to even sound credible. So it's so egregious. So this is what they wanted to use. So in what seems like well-coordinated move, the commissioners didn't show up today. The meeting was set for 2. And so you didn't have a quorum. Only Vincent Alexander showed up, and the quorum is 2 plus 2 and 1, the chair. But the Constitution says that you can meet the following day at the same time and place. So they're supposed to meet tomorrow at 2 p.m. where you could move forward with the declaration. And the commission has the powers to do that. So they then the APNU camp then went and filed this disguised elections petition before the Court of Appeal. And now that's set for hearing at 1:30 tomorrow. And so our position is that the Court of Appeal has no jurisdiction on this matter. This is a disguised elections petition. You can't have, what they're trying to do is to have a court rule that Lowenfield's fraudulent numbers can be used to declare the results of the elections. So forget all of that we've gone through. This is worse than Mingo, and he gives them an even bigger majority than Mingo. That is what they're trying to get. And so clearly you can't win an election on technicality. I think their party issued a statement today, and there are specific rulings to that effect. Thirdly, you cannot say to the commission, which is empowered to make the final declaration, because Irfan Ali is deemed president already. The final declaration that they are a rubber stamp, and whatever Lowenfield, they seem to think that whatever Lowenfield submits to the commission must dutifully accept that and declared on the basis of that. Then you don't need elections in the future in Guyana. You can get an chief elections officer who's sympathetic to a party, and he goes and declares whatever he wants or prepares a report, not based on the count, because the law says he must comply with that. When he prepares his report, he must do so in accordance with the votes counted. And the votes counted, that is under the Representation of Peoples Act, the votes counted show the PPP victory. So he doesn't have discretion at this. He can't come and wake up one morning and say, I will become a court and I will invalidate more than half of the people who voted at elections, lose their vote because APNU claim they were out the country or something else, which hasn't been proven, and invalidate half, and then come up with some fictitious numbers, fraudulent numbers. And on that basis, the commission and the chair and everybody must say, oh, we have to, because the chief elections officer bring this, the results are fraudulent, but we have to declare fraudulent results. They're not a rubber stamp. The Constitution empowers the commission to correct things in the interest of fairness and impartiality. And therefore, the Constitution has all the powers, empowers the commission to act when you have a clear case now of not one, but two rogue elements of the Secretariat. First of all, Lowenfield, Mingo, which has been proven, demonstrated that he inflated the numbers, and now Lowenfield. And this is the plot by APNU. They will not give up. They're busy cleaning up. They're trying to sell land that they acquired. They're selling the land cheap. They're hoping to cash out. A lot of things, files are disappearing. They're trying, desperately scrambling. So clearly, you can't disguise everything now, which should come under elections petition, put it before the High Court, the Court of Appeal, and say that they must hear the matter and rule on technicalities. The High Court, the Court of Appeal, we believe, has no jurisdiction in this matter, and because it's a disguised elections petition. We hope that this matter will be thrown out in the interest of moving forward our country, democracy, credibility. The entire Guyana knows about who won the elections. Everyone, many APNU supporters included, most APNU supporters. The entire international community. CARICOM, you think CARICOM, the CARICOM leaders have made it clear, we will not tolerate anyone attempting to steal an election. CARICOM has spoken. They said the recount data must be used to declare the results. You think they're going to sit by and allow APNU to come and win on a technicality and 2/3 of the vote to use Lowenfield figures? They're going to sit quietly? OAS has already made it clear the People's Progressive Party has won. Every international organization and the others have spoken out about this. So it's credibility, and sanctions will flow if they pursue this, but some of them don't care. They're so desperate. But President Granger must know all of this, and he must know that they've been misleading him. And he could bring a swift end to this if he concedes, because it would undercut all of the criminal types who are trying to drag our country in the mud. And well, they've already dragged it in the mud, but to create this turmoil, our country can't move forward. We can't tackle the important things that people want us to deal with: their health, their jobs, earning, education. Almost everything is on hold because of you don't have a legitimate government. Parliament has not met for over a year. Can't meet unless you have a declaration of the results. There are so many things that can't happen. And this small group of people are trying to abuse every system. And now they've gone to the courts. So the country is watching. I'm sure the international community is watching. A lot of credibility is at stake here. And I want to assure everyone, including the supporters of the People's Progressive Party, we knew that this drama would have many, many episodes, given the criminal nature of some of the elements in APNU that we're dealing with, and their attempt to abuse every system they have sought to, they failed. They failed so far, and now the last element they're seeking to get some kind of ruling from, hoping they could get a ruling from, that would disenfranchise all the people who voted and change what everyone clearly knows now is the code. That's what they're trying with now. This is the last stage. And therefore, I want you to continue to be patient, continue to be peaceful. We are engaged in this battle. And I want to thank all of those local forces as well as international ones who have pushed to get us so far. They come from organizations and countries and local NGOs and all the political parties that we have to keep the battle up. If we lose this one, our country, the entire Guyana, would have succumbed to the will of a few criminals. And you see who they are. Some of them helped to draft the court document, but put a front to file it. So I want to assure you that we'll continue to work at this. How are they going to change what most people know? And therefore, we'll have to pursue it. It's another setback, but as I said before, we are resilient, we are strong, we're keeping the faith, and we will fight this to the end. Thank you.